promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar and Bamako and 7 p.m. in Abuja. Good evening and welcome to Newslink. Coming to you live on West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM Dakar and worldwide at wadr.org. First, our top stories. Senegalese President Diomaye Faye concludes visit in Congo with signing of multiple agreements. Guinean President Doumbouya appoints a new executive team comprising 20 ministers. President Barrow pledges support to energy access at the ongoing International Energy Summit in Abuja.
The Gambia recognizes that energy must be diversified, sufficient and accessible to all.
And Liberia partners with the UN to train judges and judicial staff to strengthen justice delivery. Please stay tuned for details of the stories and more.
On the news, this is a More Edit.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast. This evening we begin in Guinea-Bissau, where opposition leader Fernando Dias and Domingos Simões Pereira have rejected an offer to join the transitional government just days after regaining their freedom. The two politicians turned down a proposal from the military authorities who seized power in a coup on November 26 to take part in government and hold seats on the National Transitional Council. They say accepting the offer would amount to legitimizing the coup leaders. Domingos Pereira, who spent more than 2 months in detention, remains under house arrest, while Fernando Dias, who had taken refuge in the Nigerian embassy, faces restrictions, including a ban on public statements. While ECOWAS has described their release as a step towards a return to constitutional order, both opposition figures insist they will not take part in what they describe as an attempt to whitewash the military's image. Meanwhile, Tuesday marks the second and final day of Senegalese President Bassirou Diomaye Faye's visit to the Republic of Congo. The visit, which began on Monday, is both an official and working trip aimed at strengthening cooperation ties between Senegal and Brazzaville. Augustin Colley has more details in this report.
Senegalese President Bassirou Diomaye Faye was welcomed Monday afternoon at Brazzaville Airport by Congolese President Denis Sassou Nguesso. The two leaders later held talks at the People's Palace, where they reviewed key areas of cooperation that could be strengthened, including agriculture, energy, education, and hydrocarbons. Both countries are expected to sign new cooperation agreements in the coming months to boost bilateral exchanges. Presidents Faye and Sassou Nguesso also discussed diplomatic and security challenges facing Africa. Their talks focused on ongoing tensions, particularly in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo and Sudan, ahead of the 39th African Union Summit scheduled for February in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. The two leaders further exchanged views on the candidacy of former Senegalese President Macky Sall for the position of United Nations Secretary General, a bid that could receive strong backing across the African continent.
Augustin Colley filed that report. In the meantime, the Nigeria International Energy Summit is in its second day in Abuja, the capital, with African leaders using the platform to highlight priorities on energy security, diversification, and regional cooperation. Discussions at the NIS 2026 have focused on the future of energy development and cooperation across the African continent. WDL's Abuja correspondent Yechin Sasic reports.
Thank you very much. And now
Nigeria's Vice President, Kashim Shettima, who represented President Bola Ahmed Tinubu at the summit, said Africa must position energy as a catalyst for economic growth, industrialization, and regional stability.
The theme of this year's summit, Energy for Peace and Prosperity, speaks directly to Nigeria's vision. Energy must unite communities, stabilize economies, and secure futures.
Shettima emphasized the need for policies that attract investment, deepen regional collaboration, and ensure that Africa's energy resources translate into improved livelihoods for its people. Also speaking, the President of the Gambia, Adama Barrow, called for a diversified energy strategy across the continent, stressing that reliance on a single energy source leaves African economies vulnerable.
Platforms such as NIS play a critical role in fostering dialogue, building partnerships, and aligning public and private sector efforts towards shared continental goals. The Gambia recognizes that energy must be diversified, sufficient and accessible to all.
From Central Africa, the President of Equatorial Guinea, represented by the Deputy Minister of Mines and Hydrocarbons, Domingo Mba Essono, described energy as more than an economic commodity.
For us, energy is not merely an economic commodity. It is an instrument of sovereignty, a driver of stability, and a legitimate right of our peoples to development.
The summit continues with technical sessions and high-level engagements aimed at shaping Africa's energy future through collaboration, innovation, and sustainable investment. For WADR, Yechini Sasetu in Abuja.
In Ghana, Parliament has resumed sittings for the second session of the 9th Parliament with a heavy legislative backlog and key government priorities already shaping debate in the House. Key among the agenda is an announcement by the majority leader of plans to rename Ghana's main international airport. The minority is, for its part, questioning why attention is not being given to the passage of the LGBTQ bill. Nadia Tete has more details in this report.
More than 600 outstanding bills and parliamentary questions await consideration as lawmakers return to the House. But it is a proposed change to one of Ghana's most recognizable landmarks that has quickly seized public attention. The majority leader, Mahama Yerga, says government will introduce legislation to change the name of the Kotoka International Airport back to Accra International Airport during the current sitting.
We are changing the name of our airport from Kotoka International Airport to Accra International Airport. A bill will be brought by the Minister for Transport for the name of the airport to be changed.
The facility was originally known as Accra International Airport. Its history dates back to World War II, when it functioned as a British Royal Air Force base before being transferred to civilian authorities. It was redeveloped under Ghana's first president and officially opened in 1958 under the same name. In 1969, it was renamed in honor of Lieutenant General Emmanuel Kwesi Kotoka, who died during a failed coup attempt at a site that later became part of the airport's forecourt. Alongside the renaming plan, parliamentary leadership says preparations are underway for the president's second State of the Nation address during the session. But the minority is already challenging government's priorities, particularly over what it describes as a lack of urgency in advancing the anti-LGBTQI+ bill.
The majority claims that they are ensuring the bill is properly handled, but this remains a potential flashpoint. We see some part free. To us, we think that they use it to win elections, and now that the stakeholders in the governance ecosystem are pushing at them, they are finding a way of doing some go slow.
Meanwhile, the House is still waiting for a final report into disturbances that disrupted vetting proceedings last year when tables and microphones were destroyed during a sitting of the Appointments Committee. For WDR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
And to more stories now. The Gambian government on Tuesday reacted to findings from a national opinion poll released last week. The latest SEP-RAS survey shows that many Gambians are concerned about the economy and corruption. The poll also raises questions about the ruling New Patriotic Party's electoral strength and its commitment to democracy. Usman Mara has more details in this report.
In a statement issued Tuesday, the Ministry of Information, Media and Broadcasting Services described the poll as a legitimate democratic tool, saying public concerns must be addressed responsibly. The survey shows that 66% of the citizens are unhappy with efforts to fight corruption, 60% criticized economic management, and another 66% are dissatisfied with job creation. The government, however, says steps have been taken to close administrative gaps, including the creation of an anti-corruption agency and investments in agriculture, tourism and infrastructure. Politically, 46% of respondents see the ruling NPP as the party most likely to win future elections, compared to 20% for the main opposition, United Democratic Party. Officials say the opposition remains divided, despite nearly half of respondents favoring another candidate. The statement concludes by linking the criticisms to a climate of democratic freedom and reaffirming the government's commitment to reforms, the rule of law, the fight against corruption, and national peace and stability.
Osman Mar with our report. In Guinea, President General Mamadi Doumbouya late Monday night announced a partial list of members of the new government 1 week after the government structure was put in place. 20 ministers were appointed out of the 29 expected, featuring a mix of new faces and several reappointments. Sankle Janko completes the story.
Just days after the reappointment of Amadou Uriba as head of government, a decree broadcast Monday evening announced the first phase of Guinea's executive team. In the decree signed by President General Mamadi Doumbouya, 20 ministers have been appointed out of the 29 initially planned. The appointments were made on the recommendation of Prime Minister Uriba. Only 4 of the ministers are new. They include George Ibrahim Sori Tunkara, who led the trial of the September 28, 2009 massacre, now serving as Minister of Justice and Human Rights. General Ahmed Mohamed Jallo takes charge of security and civil protection. Kaite Sall is named Minister of Health and Public Hygiene, and Patricia Adeline Lama becomes Minister of Women, Family and Social Affairs. The remaining 16 ministers were part of the previous government. Among them, government spokesperson Usman Gaul Jallo, who retained his post while others were reassigned. The final 9 ministers are expected to be named in the coming days.
Sankle Janko filed that report. Still in the Sahel, analysts say recent developments point to growing U.S. diplomatic engagement in the region. Balancing sovereignty, alliances and commercial interests, the AES bloc, whose closest ally is Russia, is this week hosting a U.S. envoy, Nick Checker. Washington says the visitors aim at strengthening security cooperation with Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger in the fight against terrorism. Sahel analyst with the International Crisis Group, Franklin Nosita, spoke to WDR.
I think that it's in large part motivated by security concerns, with the Sahel, by certain measures, currently the global hotspot for jihadism and jihadist-related violence, even more than the Middle East these days. And, that even if there's a new push right now, the engagement of the U.S. in this part of the world on security concerns is not new. It's existed since the early 2000s, going into the famous drone base in Niger. And then with the Trump administration, since it assumed office, actually has been sending signals that they are concerned about security in the Sahel and that they want to engage on that issue with multiple visits by various Trump administration personalities like Rudy Atala to Bamako not too long ago, signaling that. And then I think there's also kind of the commercial diplomacy side of it too. Obviously, it's a big thing for the Trump administration.
Our Sahel analyst with the International Crisis Group, Franklin Nosita, speaking there. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM Dakar, and live online at wadr.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Senegal's President Diomaye Faye concludes visit in Congo with signing of multiple agreements. Guinean President Doumbouya appoints a new executive team comprising 20 ministers. President Barrow pledges support to energy access at the ongoing International Energy Summit in Abuja. And still ahead in the news, Liberia partners with the UN to train judges and judicial staff to strengthen justice delivery. We do have a guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Don't forget, we are streaming live on wadr.org. We head to Togo now, where plastic pollution is no longer just an environmental issue. It has become a major public health concern. From ecosystems to human cells and even into DNA, plastic is penetrating every level of life, exposing populations to risks that are still largely unknown. To raise awareness and encourage collective action, the International Francophone Zero Plastic Coalition, through its member organizations in Togo, organized a screening and discussion of the documentary Homo Plasticus this weekend in Lomé. Let's join Christopher Teacher for the details.
Every day in Togo, millions of plastic bags are used and discarded without proper treatment, says environmentalists. This silent pollution now threatens not only the environment, but also public health. In response, citizens and environmental advocates are sounding the alarm. Adeosi Sherif, president of the Nenufa and Lutus Togo Association, highlights the urgency of action.
We organized this event to raise awareness about the presence of microplastics in the human body, from mother to a child, even in the womb. This transfer is already happening, meaning babies are exposed before birth. This is information that must be shared to prevent Homo sapiens from becoming Homo plastics. The plastic crisis is real.
L'Homo plasticus.
Civil society actors on environmental issues now aim to raise awareness about the health risks of plastic pollution and encourage citizens' action, says Boluvi Ablam Seno, Togo focal point for International Francophone Zero Plastic Coalition.
In Africa, plastic pollution is an enemy knocking on our doors. This documentary is part of the Zero Plastic Francophonie project. It aims to raise awareness and offer alternatives to single-use plastic, helping people take action.
Through upcoming awareness campaigns, the coalition hopes to spark a collective response to the growing threat of plastic, which increasingly impacts human health.
A report by Silvera Draguin Lumen, presented by Christopher Aticho. In Liberia, the government, in partnership with the United Nations Commission on Human Rights, has launched a specialized training program for prosecutors and judicial staff to strengthen the rule of law. The objective is to promote accountability, address past human rights abuses, combat corruption, and uphold international legal standards. WDL's Monrovia correspondent Abraham Parker reports.
The two-day workshop, organized by the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, focused on accountability for gross human rights abuses and serious violations of international humanitarian law. The training targeted Liberian judges and judiciary officers. Speaking at the opening, Liberia's Justice Minister and Attorney General Osford Toy called for building a stronger pool of skilled prosecutors to ensure fair and credible justice.
We are in meeting with foreign government and their agencies, including the FBI, for the joint collaboration in our clear vision to combat corruption and financial crime. We are committed to pursuing corrupt officials who have misappropriated millions of dollars and invested their ill-gotten gains abroad.
The UN Human Rights Office country representative in Liberia, Christian Mokosa, said the training aims to provide basic knowledge on international crimes.
We have specialized people within those UN agencies who are among the facilitators. We have somebody from UNICEF who is specialized in international crimes when it comes to children, someone from UN Women when it comes to participation of women and techniques, how lawyers can talk with women victims.
Liberia's World and Economic Crimes Court Office has reaffirmed its commitment to justice and accountability, describing them as vital to long-term stability and development. The office says it will continue working with national and international partners to hold the perpetrators of human rights and economic crimes accountable. It should be noted, however, that despite the progress made, including President Joseph Boakar's establishment of the court's office, a legislative framework is being awaited to fully make it operational. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
And to health news, a new report by the World Health Organization warns that nearly 2.5 billion people worldwide could be living with hearing loss by 2025. The report adds that more than 700 million of them will require rehabilitation services. Africa is expected to be among the regions most severely affected by the growing burden of hearing loss. Francis Boniface reports.
According to WHO reports, Nigeria, Kenya, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Senegal will carry more burden as access to hearing care remains limited. Currently, more than 430 million people live with disabling hearing loss, including 34 million children. WHO says in low and middle income African countries, about 80% of those affected lack access to rehabilitation services. On the flip side, WHO warns that over 1 billion young people are at risk due to unsafe listening habits. The Global Health Agency adds that hearing loss can affect people at any age and may be caused by genetic factors, including injections, injuries, unsafe noise exposure, certain medications, chronic diseases, and aging. The WHO, however, notes that improving hearing care is affordable, costing less than $1.40 per person each year, with significant long-term benefits. Untreated hearing loss can lead to communication difficulties, social isolation, learning challenges, and economic hardship. Many cases, however, are preventable through vaccination, infection control, noise protection, and proper use of medicines. For Africa, WHO recommends that prevention and improved access to services such as hearing aids, speech therapy, and inclusive communication tools be prioritized to address the looming health burden.
Francis Boniface filed that report.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
We continue the conversation with our guest, Sahel analyst with the International Crisis Group, Franklin Nosita. Nosita speaks to WDL against the backdrop of an ongoing tour of the AES bloc by U.S. envoy Nick Chaka. Chaka was already met with authorities in Mali, is expected in Burkina Faso and Niger, where he intends to meet with the military leaders to discuss security cooperation. For the trio, would they be at a crossroad of sovereignty, balancing alliances and commercial interests? As a reminder, the U.S. was expelled by the AES member states following the coups and leaned more toward Russia for support. Franklin Nosita responds.
What happened in the 2020s, mainly under the Biden administration, was I think it was mostly, and I think people might disagree about this, but it was mostly a backlash against France. On France, which had a big military presence and all of this in the region, fighting these jihadist groups. And the U.S. was kind of, and I know that there's U.S. officials who feel this way, that the U.S. was kind of just swept up along in that, even if the backlash was mainly against France. And I think that there's people in the U.S., in the Trump administration, who are people who have worked on issues of counterterrorism and jihadist groups for a long time. And even if Trump himself has a more isolationist bent, there's people in his administration that, frankly, when they see jihadists around the world, they want to go and find them and kill them. And that's what they want to come to the Sahel and do. Now, will they be able to do that, I think, is another question, given the political complexities.
Is this more now about America trying to reposition itself in the Sahel and have a grip on West Africa, or it's a fight now about the strong and mighty, which has been more like the Trump recent trend, just going to countries and imposing the American military strength? Again, this would be directly targeting Russia or China?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. The Trump administration wants to signal that it's very different from the Biden administration. So where the Biden administration said, the Nigerians kicked the U.S. out, but also that was partially because the Biden administration, sent signals very directly said, we're not going to work with a coup government. You need to have elections. You don't work with Russia. Don't do this. Don't do that. Whereas, my understanding of the Trump administration has been much more, they've been much more maybe relaxed, you might say, on some of those questions. So I think that they want to demonstrate how different they are and say, well, you guys, the coup leaders in the Sahel, you couldn't work with Biden. Well, we're a new kind of America. And you can work with us. And I think that's a message they want to send to the Sahel, but I think they want to send that message kind of to everyone. And then I think that there's also, there seems to be a real interest in some circles of Washington for more activity in West Africa, which is seeing, big jihadist violence, not just in the Sahel, but obviously in Nigeria as well, where, the U.S. did the strikes not too long ago. And I think all of that shows that I think it's very important not to overestimate it. West Africa isn't for the Trump administration, and it's never, in fact, really been a priority region for any American administration.
I mean, for most of the countries that Trump goes to today, there is a bit of the talks covered under political disguise or protection of human rights. But then these are countries also rich in mineral resources. Could this be a long-term agenda for Trump?
Yeah, I think it's certainly something to consider. Obviously, everybody has paid a lot of attention to the U.S. involvement in the Congo, in DRC, where, there's lots of what they call critical minerals, and the U.S. was very involved in a peace accord, and that gave it access to those minerals. But I think the situation in the Sahel is actually quite a bit different from what you see in DRC for a couple of reasons. First of all, the U.S. has a history of commercial and mining involvement in the DRC, and they just don't have that in the Sahel, where much of the mining has been done by French or Canadian even, or Russian in some cases. And when you don't have that pre-existing involvement on some of this kind of infrastructure-intensive stuff like industrial mining, it makes it difficult to get involved And then the minerals that are there, in my opinion, less attractive to the U.S. than some of the rare minerals you see in Congo, for example. I mean, you see, in the Sahel, you've got lots of gold, you've got uranium in Niger, you've got lithium in Mali, but the lithium, the Chinese, actually, there's already a Chinese company involved in lithium exploitation in Mali. The uranium, I don't see the U.S. really going for that in a serious way. I mean, and again, the gold, it's already kind of all being occupied. So I think it's certainly something. And we've actually seen American companies kind of looking at gold mines in southern Mali. And we've actually seen a Canadian company with American support looking at uranium in Niger. So, I don't want to never say never, right?
Franklin Osita is a Sahel analyst with the International Crisis Group. In Sport Brief, Nigeria international Ademola Lookman has officially completed his transfer from Italian Serie A side Atalanta to Spanish giant Atletico Madrid, following an agreement between the two clubs. The 28-year-old forward has signed a contract with the Formula Liga champions that will run until 30th of June 2030. Lookman, a versatile and dynamic right-footed winger, played a key role in Atalanta's historic Europa League triumph in 2024, notably scoring a hat-trick in their victory over Bayern Leverkusen. Reports indicate that Atletico Madrid paid approximately 40 million euros, that's about 47.5 million pounds, dollars for the Nigerian international, who has contributed 3 goals in 19 appearances across all competitions this season. And we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Mauduju for the technical support. Let's keep the conversation coming on all of our social media platforms, TikTok, X, Instagram, and Facebook at WADR English. I am Imo Edet. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.